Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been looking over this stack of sources you sent our way, and
Yeah,
it's it's really fascinating stuff.
it is.
It's
Yeah.
really made us think about well, one question in particular, I guess,
Yeah.
that's that's super important for
Yeah.
anyone who's trying to get a grip on what really makes a difference in education,
hmm
especially in special ed.
Yeah, I mean, this deep dive is going to get to the bottom of something that I think will really change how you look at educational research. Like
Exactly.
when you see an article or hear a presentation about some new intervention that's supposed to,
Right.
improve student outcomes
Like by a lot.
by a huge margin, right? This is going to make you think twice
Yeah, for sure.
about those big promises.
Yeah, so we're really diving into this idea that the studies that get published, the ones you see in journals,
Yeah.
the ones that have gone through peer review and all that,
Right. They've made it through the gauntlet. They've
exactly,
been vetted.
right. They might actually be showing us
Yeah. Yeah.
more exciting, more impressive results
Way more impressive.
than all the studies that, for whatever reason, don't get published.
Like, imagine this, right? You're looking at a study
Okay.
that says, boom, this new reading program boosted kids' scores by a whole grade level.
Wow.
Sounds amazing, right?
Yeah.
But what if, and here's the kicker, what if you looked at all the research out there?
All of it.
Not just the shiny published stuff, but all of it.
Okay.
Including those studies that never saw the light of day.
Right.
That same impressive grade level jump
Yeah.
might actually be closer to half a grade level.
Oh, wow.
The real picture, it might be a lot less flashy.
Way less impressive.
And that's the kind of thing we're going to be talking about in this deep dive.
For sure.
So you, the listener, don't get fooled by those super impressive sounding results that maybe aren't the whole story.
Yeah, don't just take every positive finding as gospel, right?
Exactly.
There might be more to the story.
Absolutely. And, to really dig into this, you flagged this one study that's really fascinating. It's called
Do published studies yield larger effect sizes than unpublished studies in education and special education? A meta-review?
Right, by Chow and Ekholm,
2018.
2018, in the Educational Psychology Review.
Now, a meta-review.
That's like you're taking a bunch of summaries of research, like a bunch of meta-analyses.
Summary.
Exactly. And you're looking for like the big overarching trends, the patterns that hold true across all those individual analyses.
Gotcha.
And those meta-analyses, they're super important because they're often the backbone of like educational policies.
Oh, wow.
They influence the stuff we see happening in schools every day.
Right.
So yeah, this meta-review,
That's a big deal.
it's a pretty big deal. It gives us a way to see, if there's something systematically off about what's considered proven in education.
Okay, so let's break this down a bit, starting with this idea of publication bias.
Mhm.
Like, what does that actually mean in research?
Publication bias. It's this sneaky tendency where studies that get statistically significant results or,
Yeah.
positive, exciting results,
Like they found something.
they found something. Those are the ones that are way more likely to end up in those fancy academic journals.
Right.
Way more likely than the studies that don't find those kinds of flashy results.
Okay, so the ones that are like
Yeah.
the null results, the negative findings.
Exactly, the ones that say, nope, this thing we tried didn't really do much.
Yeah.
Those often get left out in the cold.
So like you could have a really well-designed study,
Oh, total.
super rigorous, follows all the rules,
Textbook perfect.
but it shows that like an intervention doesn't work.
Right.
That study.
It might just end up gathering dust on a researcher's computer.
Seriously. Just because it didn't have a big splashy, we found something result,
Yep. Sad but true.
even though that information is still valuable.
Oh, absolutely. Knowing what doesn't work is just as important as knowing what does.
Right, so why wouldn't researchers want to publish those null results?
I mean, ideally,
Yeah.
every well-done study would get shared. Right.
Right.
But there are these, pressures.
Yeah.
Researchers might not be as motivated to spend the time and effort to get a study with no big findings published
Right.
in journals. They often want to publish research that seem as, impactful or exciting.
The groundbreaking stuff.
Exactly.
Stuff that's going to make a splash.
Right. And let's be honest, a study that says, this thing didn't work, isn't usually seen as headline grabbing.
Right.
So you end up with this bias towards the positive, the exciting, the statistically significant.
So it's not just like a hunch. There's actually evidence to back this up.
Oh, yeah, there's research about the research. Isn't that meta?
It is. It is.
But for real, like Rothstein and a bunch of other researchers back in 2006, they said that publication bias is maybe the biggest threat to how valid meta-analyses are.
Wow, so that's a pretty strong statement.
It is, because if we're relying on meta-analyses to make decisions about educational practices and policies,
Right.
but those meta-analyses are based on a skewed sample of research,
The published stuff?
then we're not getting the full picture.
So the research we're seeing might not be the whole story.
Exactly.
like-
The highlight reel.
Yeah, the highlight reel, not the full game.
And that can be really misleading.
Now, I know this paper mainly talks about publication bias.
Right.
But it also mentions these other kinds of biases, like
Yeah.
dissemination biases.
Oh, yeah. Those are sneaky, too.
Can you sort of talk about what those are and how they might also,
Mess things up.
mess things up? Yeah, for someone who's trying to figure out what works in education.
Totally. So beyond just, null results not getting published,
Right.
there are these other things that can lead to an overly optimistic view of, what's effective.
Like?
Well, there's small studies bias where,
Okay.
smaller studies that just happen to find a positive effect.
Just by chance.
Yeah, just by chance.
Okay.
They might be more likely to get published.
Interesting.
So it's like if you have a few teachers who try out a new method and they love it,
Right.
their small-scale anecdotal success might get more attention.
And get published.
Exactly. Even if a larger, more rigorous study later on finds that the method doesn't actually have any overall benefit.
Okay, so a couple of teachers' positive experience doesn't necessarily mean the method is actually effective.
Right.
Interesting.
And then there's time lag bias. Studies with positive results tend to get published faster.
Oh, that makes sense.
So you might end up with a bunch of initial studies showing great results, and then later on, when more research comes out, the picture might be less rosy.
But by then,
the initial hype has already taken hold.
right, people are already using the method.
Exactly. And then there's analyses reporting bias. This is where researchers might,
Cherry pick.
kind of cherry pick. They might only report the findings from their analysis that show positive effects,
Oh, sneaky?
even if they looked at a bunch of different things.
Right, so even within a single study, there can be this bias toward highlighting the positive, the stuff that worked.
It's all about putting your best foot forward, I guess.
But that can really distort the overall picture.
It can.
Now, this idea of positive results being favored,
Yeah.
that's not new, right?
Not at all. This has been observed in a bunch of different fields.
Oh.
Not just education,
Like where?
psychology, medicine, you name it.
Really?
Yeah, there's a whole body of research about this bias.
Wow.
Like Cook and Therian.
Okay.
Back in 2017, they pointed this out specifically in education research.
So this is a well-documented problem.
Yep. Torgerson in 2006, he also talked about it.
So it's been around for a while.
It has.
Now, I can imagine some people listening to this and thinking,
Yeah.
well, maybe those unpublished studies
Yeah.
just weren't very good. Like maybe they had flaws, maybe the ideas behind them weren't that strong,
Sure.
or maybe the findings were just boring.
It's a fair question.
Is that a fair point?
Absolutely. It's worth considering.
Yeah.
Some unpublished studies might have methodological weaknesses.
Right, like they didn't do the research properly.
Exactly. Or maybe they lacked a strong theoretical framework.
So the ideas behind them weren't that solid.
Right. Or maybe the findings were just not that interesting.
Right, no one wants to read about something that's not that exciting.
Exactly.
But does that mean that publication bias isn't real?
It doesn't rule it out.
Oh, okay.
Just because some unpublished studies might have weaknesses
Right.
doesn't mean that publication bias isn't also playing a role in skewing the research we see.
So it could be both.
It could be both.
Okay, so we have to consider both possibilities.
Exactly.
Both explanations could be true.
And sometimes these alternative explanations can actually make it easier for people who are skeptical of publication bias to dismiss it.
Really?
Yeah, they might say, well, see, those unpublished studies were just bad studies.
Right, but that might not be the whole story.
Exactly.
So it's not an either situation.
Nope, it's more nuanced than that.
Okay, so what's an example of this?
Well, think about the work of Hopewell and his colleagues.
Okay.
They looked at healthcare meta-analyses back in 2007.
Healthcare, so not education.
Right, but it illustrates the point.
Okay.
They found that there wasn't strong evidence to say that unpublished trials were of lower quality than published ones.
So the quality was similar.
Yeah, but here's the thing. The published trials still showed larger treatment effects.
Really?
Yep, which suggests that something else, besides just the quality of the research,
Right.
might be influencing what gets published.
Interesting. So it's not just about good studies versus bad studies.
Exactly.
There are these other factors at play. Okay, so now we have a sense that publication bias is probably a real thing
Mm-hmm.
and that it's happening in education and other fields.
Yeah.
So how do researchers actually figure out if publication bias is happening in a specific area of research?
That's a great question, and it's where things get a little bit technical,
Okay,
but I'll try to explain it in a way that makes sense.
please do.
So researchers have developed these statistical tools, kind of like detective tools, to
Right.
try and sniff out publication bias.
Okay.
And these tools often involve looking at the relationship between the results of a study
Right.
and how precise those results are, which is usually related to the size of the study.
Okay, so bigger studies, more precise results.
Exactly.
Smaller studies,
More wiggle room.
more wiggle room. Okay.
And sometimes those smaller, less precise studies,
Yeah.
they can show more exaggerated effects.
Just by chance?
Yeah, partly by chance, partly because those are the ones that might be more likely to get published if they have a big, exciting finding.
So they're overrepresented in the published literature.
Exactly.
Okay, so what are some of these detective tools?
Well, one common one is called a funnel plot.
Okay, a funnel plot.
It's a graph where each study's findings are plotted. And if there's no bias, the plot should look like a symmetrical funnel.
A nice even funnel.
Yep. But if there's asymmetry,
Like it's lopsided.
yeah, that can be a sign of publication bias.
Okay.
Like maybe there are a bunch of small studies with positive results.
That are skewing the funnel.
Exactly, they're pulling the funnel over to one side.
Gotcha.
But the thing is, relying on just visually looking at a funnel plot
Yeah,
and deciding if it's symmetrical or not
right.
can be a bit subjective.
Like one researcher might see asymmetry, another might not.
Exactly, so it's not the most reliable method.
Okay, so what else is there?
Well, there are other statistical tests like Egger's regression
Egger's regression, okay.
and Begin-Mazumdar's rank correlation.
Those sound complicated.
They are a bit, but basically they try to quantify the asymmetry in the funnel plot.
So they give you a number that tells you how lopsided the funnel is.
Exactly, so it's more objective than just eyeballing it.
Okay, so it's not just about looking at a graph and saying, shit, that lets a bit off.
Nope, these statistical tests give you a more concrete way to assess the possibility of bias.
Right, but even with these tools,
Yeah.
there are limitations, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So what do organizations like Cochrane and Campbell, what do they recommend?
They say that anyone doing a meta-analysis
Yeah.
should actively search for both published and unpublished studies.
So not just the stuff that's easy to find.
Exactly. They need to look for the gray literature,
The gray literature.
which includes things like dissertations, conference papers, unpublished reports, that kind of stuff.
So stuff that might not be in the big databases.
Right, because if you only look at the published studies...
You might miss a big chunk of the research.
Exactly. You might end up with a biased picture of what the evidence really says.
So did Chow and Ekholm find that most of the meta-analyses they looked at
Yeah.
were actually following this advice?
Yeah.
Were they looking for the gray literature?
Well, here's the thing, and it's kind of a bummer.
Okay.
They looked at 222 meta-analyses. It's in education and special ed,
Okay.
and they found that a whopping 58%.
58%.
58% of them didn't even mention trying to find unpublished studies.
Wow. So the majority of these summaries of research
Yeah.
weren't even checking if the published studies they were relying on were giving a skewed view.
Sadly, that's what it looks like.
And of the ones that did try to test for publication bias,
Yeah.
how many actually found evidence of it?
Only about 25%.
So it seems like this problem is often ignored,
Mm-hmm.
or at least not being detected.
It's a bit concerning, to say the least.
It is, especially if we're using these meta-analyses to make important decisions.
Absolutely.
So what were those few meta-analyses that did test for bias? What methods were they using?
The most common one, as we talked about,
Right.
was visual examination of funnel plots.
Just looking at the graph?
Yep, seeing if it looked symmetrical or not.
Okay.
Some also use the failsafe N,
Fail-safe in? Okay.
which is basically trying to estimate how many unpublished studies with null results
Okay.
would have to exist to overturn a significant finding.
So, like, if there were a bunch of unpublished studies that showed no effect,
Yeah.
would that be enough to make the overall finding non-significant?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And some used Egger's regression or Begin-Mazumdar's rank correlation.
All right, the more objective statistical tests.
Right.
Now, I know Chow and Ekholm weren't too keen on relying too much On just visually inspecting funnel plots?
Yeah.
Or on the fail-safe N?
They had some valid concerns about those methods.
No, were they?
Well, with funnel plots, it's just so subjective.
Right. One person's symmetry is another person's asymmetry.
Exactly, and that can lead to different interpretations of the same data.
So it's not a very reliable way to assess bias.
Not really, no.
What about the fail-safe N?
The problem with that one is that it focuses too much on statistical significance,
Okay.
like whether the p-value is below 0.05.
Right, the magic cutoff.
Yeah, but in meta-analysis, with enough studies,
Yeah.
even a tiny effect.
Can become statistically significant.
Exactly, so a high fail-safe N.
Like, it would take a lot of unpublished studies to overturn the finding.
Yeah, that might make it seem like the finding is really robust.
Right.
But it could still be inflated by publication bias.
So just because the finding is statistically significant doesn't mean it's not biased.
Right, it could still be overestimating the true effect.
Interesting.
And Chow and Ekholm also pointed out that very few meta-analyses used more comprehensive ways to test for bias.
Okay, like what?
Well, Ferguson and Brannick, back in 2012, they recommended using a combination of methods,
Yep.
like Orwin's fail-safe N,
Okay.
Egger's test, and trim and fill analysis.
A whole toolbox of statistical tests.
Exactly, to get a more solid assessment of publication bias.
But none of the meta-analyses Chow and Ekholm looked at did that.
Nope, not a single one.
So it seems like there's room for improvement in how we test for this bias.
For sure.
Okay, so we've talked about what publication bias is,
Yeah.
how researchers try to detect it,
Mm-hmm.
the fact that it's not always being looked for.
Right.
Now let's get to the really important part.
Yeah.
What did Chow and Ekholm actually find about the difference between the results of published and unpublished studies?
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting.
Oh.
And it really highlights why you, the listener,
Yeah.
should care about this issue.
Okay.
They looked at the 29 meta-analyses that met their criteria
Okay.
for this part of their analysis.
Right.
And they found that, on average,
Yeah.
published studies reported significantly larger effect sizes.
Then unpublished studies.
Yeah.
So the published studies were showing bigger effects.
Yep, and not just by a little bit.
How big was the difference?
They calculated an average difference of 0.64.
0.64. Yeah, that's a Cohen's d, right?
That's right, a Cohen's d of 0.64.
Now, for our listeners who aren't statisticians,
Yeah.
can you explain what that means in a way that,
Makes sense.
makes sense, yeah, in the real world?
Sure. So a Cohen's d of 0.64
Yeah.
is generally considered a medium to large effect size.
Okay.
So it's not trivial.
Not just a small difference?
Nope, it's a meaningful difference.
So if you're looking at, like, an educational intervention,
Yeah.
a difference of 0.64.
That could mean a really noticeable difference in student outcomes.
Wow, so meta-analyses that only look at published studies
Yeah.
might be way overestimating how well things actually work in education.
That's exactly what it suggests.
That's kind of a big deal.
It is. It means that what we think we know about what works
Yeah.
might be based on an incomplete and potentially misleading picture of the evidence.
So, like, imagine a school district.
Okay.
They're trying to decide what reading program to use. And they're looking at a meta-analysis
Right.
that only included published studies.
Okay.
And those published studies
Yeah.
are showing this inflated effect size because of publication bias.
Right.
That district,
They might end up spending a lot of money on a program.
that's not as effective as it seems.
Exactly. And that's a real problem.
That has real consequences for students.
It does.
So this 0.64 difference,
Yeah.
how does that compare to what other research has found?
Well, it's actually bigger than some earlier estimates.
Really?
Yeah, Chung and Slavin,
Okay.
in 2016, they found a difference of about 0.14.
0.14.
And Polanin and his colleagues, in the
Yeah.
same year,
Yeah.
they found a difference of about 0.18.
So Chow and Ekholm's finding
Yeah,
is suggesting that the problem might be even bigger than we thought.
exactly.
Okay, so why might their estimate be bigger?
Well, a few reasons maybe.
Okay.
Chow and Ekholm looked at a wider range of journals than Polanin at all.
So they included more journals in their analysis.
Right, and it's possible that publication bias is worse in some journals than others.
Okay, that makes sense.
And Chung and Slavin, they specifically focused on interventions for core academic skills.
Like reading and math.
Exactly, and they only looked at interventions that lasted for a certain amount of time.
So Chow and Ekholm's review was broader.
Much broader.
They included more types of intervention.
And more types of outcomes.
Right.
So their findings might reflect the fact that publication bias is more pervasive across the whole field of education.
Okay, that's a good point.
So it's not just limited to those core academic areas. It might be affecting all sorts of research and education.
So the published literature might be painting a rosier picture than what's actually happening in the real world.
It seems that way.
Okay, so they also looked at whether the way the effectiveness was measured played a role in this difference between published and unpublished studies.
Right. They looked at the effect size metric.
The effect size metric. Okay.
And they found that it did matter.
Really?
Yep. The type of effect size used in the meta-analysis make a difference in how big the discrepancy was.
Okay, so what types of effect sizes did they look at?
They mainly focused on standardized mean differences.
Standardized mean differences, okay.
And correlational effect sizes.
Okay. Can you explain the difference between those two?
Sure. So standardized mean difference effect sizes,
Yeah.
like Cohen's d or Hedges' g,
Okay.
they're used when you're comparing the average outcomes of two groups.
So like students who got a new teaching method versus those who didn't.
Exactly. And correlational effect sizes, like Pearson's are.
Okay.
They look at how strongly two variables are related.
So like the relationship between how much homework students do and their test scores.
Exactly.
Okay, so what did they find?
They found that the difference between published and unpublished studies was much bigger for standardized mean differences.
So for studies that were comparing groups than for correlational effect sizes. So studies that were just looking at relationships between things.
Right.
Interesting.
For correlational effects.
Yeah.
The average difference was actually pretty small.
And not statistically significant.
Right, but for standardized mean differences.
The group comparison studies.
Yep, the difference was much bigger, and it was statistically significant.
So it seems like research that's looking at the impact of interventions might be more prone to publication bias.
That's what it seems like.
Than research that's just examining relationships.
Maybe interventions are just seen as more exciting.
Right, they have more direct implications for practice.
Exactly.
So if an intervention shows a big positive effect,
yeah,
it's more likely to get published.
And that might explain why we see this bigger difference for those types of studies.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's all about what gets attention, I guess.
Now, this meta-review, like any research study, it has limitations.
It does.
What are some things we should keep in mind when we're thinking about their findings?
Well, one thing is that the overall effect size difference of 0.64, that was based on a subset of the meta-analyses they reviewed.
Right, not all 222.
Exactly. It was based on 29.
Okay.
So it might not generalize perfectly to all areas of education research.
So the problem could be even bigger.
It's possible.
Than what they found.
Yeah, and Polanin and his colleagues, they pointed out that focusing on higher quality journals might actually underestimate the extent of publication bias.
Really? Why is that?
Because studies with weaker or null findings, they might be even less likely to get published in those top-tier journals.
So lower-tier journals might be where we see even more of this bias.
Exactly.
Okay, that's interesting.
And another thing to remember is that special education research, it often involves smaller sample sizes.
Because the populations are smaller.
Exactly, and that can lead to what's called small study effects.
Small study effects, okay.
Where smaller studies that find statistically significant results are more likely to get published.
So it's kind of a double whammy.
It is. You have smaller sample sizes, and then those smaller studies with positive findings are more likely to make it into print.
So it can create a skewed picture of the evidence.
Absolutely.
Now, what about the gray literature itself?
Yeah.
Are there any challenges with trying to include that in a meta-analysis?
Oh, for sure.
Like what?
Well, first of all, finding all the relevant gray literature can be really tough.
It's not always indexed in the same way as published research.
Exactly. And some types of unpublished research, like internal reports or studies that were never formally written up, they can be really hard to track down.
So even if you're trying to be comprehensive, you might not be able to find everything.
That's right. And that means the gray literature that does get included in a meta-analysis might not be totally representative of all the unpublished research out there.
Right. It might still be biased in some way.
And there's also the possibility of bias even within the gray literature.
Okay, how so?
Well, researchers might be more likely to know about and include unpublished work from their colleagues.
Right, their friends and collaborators.
Yeah. Which can introduce a whole other set of biases.
Interesting. So it's not a perfect solution.
It's not, but it's an important step in the right direction.
Now, the study also talked about reporting bias. Can you remind us what that is and how it relates to this whole publication bias issue?
Sure. So reporting bias is when researchers selectively report only the positive or